In this video, we're going to take a quick look at how to add an if function to a loan amortization schedule. So in this case, I'm going to have a loan amortization schedule of 30 years with monthly payments, and I'm going to use an if function to populate the cells if a certain condition is met. In this case, if the loan happens to be beyond 180 payments. So one way to do this is to go to the cell and activate the cell, in this case B11. And activating the cell just means clicking on it. And then I'm going to press F2. And F2 allows me to edit that cell. And now I'm going to press home and the right arrow. And that's inserted the cursor right before the PMT function. And because I want to add an if function, I'm going to type IF in left parenthesis. And here you see the inputs for our if function. And in this case, I've started with the loan amortization schedule already populated because I want to know that it works, and then I want to add the if function around it. And so is the time period in column A going to be less than whatever some condition we've established? So after I press F2, anytime I press one of the arrow keys, it's simply going to move the cursor within that function. And so what I can do now is press F2 if I want to select a particular cell. And now if I press the arrow key, it'll move it over to the cell A11. And I want to know if that is less than some other condition, I want the payment to appear. And so now we have the first two components of our if function. We have the logical test and the value of true. And if I want to go back to where I can move the cursor within this function, I need to press F2 again. So there I pressed F2 and end in order to move the cursor all the way to the end of this formula. And now I want to put the value for false. So I type a comma to make sure that we're in that portion of the if function. And here I want to display the letter N, a forward slash, and the letter A. If I were to type it in like this, we'll get an error here. So you'll notice that there's an error over in cell B11. The reason we get the error is because I'm using text inside of a formula that isn't for a specific function. And if I'm going to do that, then I have to use quotation marks around it. So if I hit enter now, we'll see what happens. You'll notice that it's NA, but it shouldn't be, right? This should show up with the payment value. But because I don't have anything in that cell that it's referencing in B8, it's not going to work correctly. And now I'm going to fill down, and we're going to see one issue with the formula as I've currently written it. So I'm going to hold down Control-Shift and the down arrow to select all of the contiguous cells. And then I'm going to hold down Control and hit the letter D for down. And you'll notice we got something different than what we expected, and there is an issue in the way that we wrote this if function. So let's go back to the top and look at it. So I've made two mistakes here, both of which are going to be important to fix. The first one is that as I fill down, this is actually going to reference a different cell and move down the table with it. So here you see it uses B9 as a reference, and I don't want that. And I need to go back up and update this formula in cell B11 in order to fill it down correctly. And what I need to do is create an absolute reference here by pressing F4. That way, as I fill down, we'll see that it's going to reference that cell absolutely. And now we have what we were expecting for the final payments of this loan amortization schedule, but there is still one issue. And what we're trying to do is also see month 180, because if this were a 15-year mortgage, we'd want a value there for the mortgage to end. I'll go back up and change the term and we'll see this. You'll also see here that I have some other conditional formatting. This is going to be our last payment and we want to see that value. So we need to make one more change. And the change I'm going to make is I'm simply going to put in an equal sign. And I want to know if it's less than or equal to that, and then I'll fill down and that should take care of our issue. And we'll go back up and look. So a couple things to remember as we're working through this: make sure that we reference the correct cell using absolute cell references. And if I were going to fill right using this formula, I'd also have to do something with the reference to cell A11. I need a $ there in front of the A, so that way if I moved across columns, it wouldn't move the column with it. And in this case, we decided to make it a true value. If we wanted to change the sign up to make it a false value, we could do that as well. And here you see that change will give us the same result.